I've awoken from my slumber, risen from my grave. Sorry it's been a while, but I got the camera rolling.
Are you loaded? Yes, sir. Good. So am I.
And I want to talk about 2024's Nosferatu, specifically the artistic influences. My background is actually in art history. And so as a horror fan watching interviews with the director Robert Eggers, I wanted to delve into that further. Yes, big time spoilers straight ahead. Before we delve into the artistic references and how they influenced or related to the film, let's start with a summary of the story's essentials. If you don't know, although I assume most of my audience does, Robert Eggers' 2024 Nosferatu is an adaptation of 1922's Nosferatu, a silent black and white German horror classic worthy of its own video. And as Eggers kept saying in interviews, the original was basically Bram Stoker's Dracula made into a simple, timeless fairy tale.
Murnau and his collaborators turned Bram Stoker's novel of Dracula into a simple fairy tale.
The fact that Murnau and his team turned it into this simple fairy tale.
The Murnau adaptation is just a simple fairy tale.
Eggers' Nosferatu was not an identical remake, however. The bones of his modern version go something like this. Before the main events of the film, there were important events in the life of the character Ellen. She is naturally highly conductive to otherworldly forces and has spells where she kind of astrally travels beyond our sphere. This made it hard for her to connect with others. Loneliness made her vulnerable, and she cried out into the abyss for some celestial being to come to her in her desperation.
Come to me. Come to me. Hear my call.
And this attracted a dark, powerful being with bad intentions. This demon lover, or Nosferatu, named Count Orlok, we're told was a dark enchanter in life and now a vampire in death. She says later that at first it was bliss, but it turned into torture. Given this, she broke her vow to be with him eternally and endeavored to go find happiness elsewhere. See her new hubby, Thomas Hutter, the real estate guy.
I've never been so happy as that moment. As I held hands with death.
As events unfold, it becomes clear this demon lover isn't going to let the past go and intends to come back for her whilst spreading sickness and death all around. Mass plague. Problem is, most people think Ellen is hysterical and don't take the threat seriously until death is upon them. To end all this horror, she is left no choice but to give herself back to the demon lover so everybody else, including her new love, can go about their lives. Yeah, the vampire sucks her blood until dawn and they die in each other's arms. Pretty grim, but gorgeous in its grotesqueness. It all boils down to the tragedy of a highly perceptive or extrasensory being who's the victim of a not very perceiving society. After all, the 19th century was a time when people were more and more proud to proclaim themselves as being modern-minded and having beliefs based on science, reason, and logic. Meanwhile, Professor von Franz remarks that in a bygone time, Ellen might have been a priestess of Isis. Had the world around her, which prized intellect above all else, been humble enough to for a moment consider the possibility of the reality of Ellen's warnings, maybe things could have gone differently. Now, let's get into the artistic references and how they tie in. When asked about painting references that helped to inspire his film, Eggers mentioned both painters of German Romanticism and Symbolist painters.
Like Murnau, we were looking at David Caspar Friedrich and Johann Christian Dahl and other like German Romantic Biedermeier painters and like Symbolist painters who are derided by art critics but are actually good.
The influence of German Romanticism on the film seems visually very obvious. A common term from the movement, both in literature and art, was Sturm und Drang. Let me try that again. Sturm and Drang. Sturm und Drang. Storm and stress, literally translated, but more simply in everyday use, just turmoil. This was often indicative of works which emphasized emotionalism and individualism. Romanticism rejected the calm and order of earlier classicism and was evocative of something more restless, longing. Relating to this high emotionalism, artists of Romanticism commonly believed that art can't be learned. It comes from a divine source, the artist being mere vessel or conduit. Our protagonist, Ellen, is shown as a being who feels and senses deeply in a world of people who dismiss her. This unusual emotional capacity alone makes her highly individualistic, and a step further, she seems much like a vessel of or conduit for celestial or supernatural forces. These spells of hers aren't something she wills, and these forces, like Nosferatu, are beyond her control. This role she serves isn't unlike how Romanticism conceived of the artist. Some of these ideas extend similarly to painters of Symbolism. Symbolism rejected naturalism. Symbolism was attempting to depict the inner subjective experience, emotion, rather than representing the objective world around them as naturalism did. This led to lots of fantastical dream worlds occupied by monsters and mythology pertaining to themes of love, death, unrequited desire, and very often featuring a woman as a symbol for whatever they were trying to say, good or bad. And if you honed in on the mention of dream worlds, it's possible that you remembered the dreamlike look and feel of several scenes from Nosferatu. Interestingly, Robert Eggers wasn't the only one to reference their artistic influences for this film in interviews. In addition to mentioning Isabella Gianni's performance in Possession as inspiration for this role, Lily Rose Depp also mentioned an art form called Butoh.
A lot of the idea behind it is kind of like almost letting your consciousness kind of float away from your body and becoming like an empty vessel for something else to take over you.
Now, Butoh is recognizable for the dancer's use of white body paint, either representative of death or simply as a tool in sublimating the dancer's individual identities, as well as their distorted facial expressions, slow controlled movements, and thematically a penchant for taboo topics. And it does feel like beyond the physical contortions within Lily Rose Depp's performance, some of the stuff going on with Ellen definitely felt taboo. And there was something very primal present. Taking together what we know about German Romanticism, Symbolism, Butoh, these artistic references seem to share a stance that's present in the film. It's valuable for individuals and society to be able to tap into the emotional and spiritual experience, and we should be wary of reducing what we experience to the mundane. Even I, someone who would prefer to approach the world as scientifically as possible, have to admit that that concept isn't foolproof. What was science yesterday might be highly unscientific today. See the scenes of Ellen being tied down due to her hysteria, which was very much believed to be a scientifically sound diagnosis in the 1800s. And on the flip side, see our current day science, which would have been considered magic not too long ago. It's a difficult path determining what is reality, and it's assured that we know less than we think we do. What other takeaways before we close out? Some hated it, but Nosferatu looking like a rotted corpse worked for me, and I was on board immediately. I almost laughed when Nosferatu dropped those kids like a couple of Raggedy Ann dolls. Last, although I was here for the craftsmanship behind this film and enjoyed the artistic touches, obviously, I can't lie, Shadow of the Vampire is still my favorite Nosferatu-inspired film. Let me know what you thought about Nosferatu, if you picked up on any of these artistic references, or, you know, if you have another version that you think is 10 times better other than obviously the original. Thanks for watching. See you next time.